Would it surprise you if I told you that the most resilient people I know are not the ones who bounce back the fastest? They're actually the ones who learn to live with the challenges, the heartbreak, the pain, and still be present and find hope. They don't live in the either or world. They live in the world of both and. Today, we're going to talk about tragic optimism and why it may be the most honest form of resilience you'll ever practice. Welcome to the Building Resilience Podcast, episode 238, Why Bouncing Back is a Lie and What Resilience Really Looks Like. Welcome to Building Resilience, a podcast where theory, practical strategies, and inspiring stories show you how to unlock your best life. I'm your host, Leah Davidson. As a certified life coach, speech-language pathologist, and nervous system resilience expert, it is my mission to teach you how to be more resilient to life's adversities. I will show you how to manage your mind, befriend your nervous system, process your emotions, and even eliminate stress. It's time to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive. Let's get started. Hello, friends. How are you doing today? How's your nervous systems? I'm excited to share this week's episode with you. But before I do that, I want to remind you of a couple of things. I have a lot of different things going on and I wanted to share because sometimes I hesitate in sharing all things and then I'll hear from somebody who will say, I didn't know that was available. And they'll say they listened to my podcast and then they heard about something that I offered. They had no idea and they almost missed something. So I wanted to make sure I shared here first. I am trying to create programs and products that give people options, anywhere from dipping your toe in to learn the basics about the nervous system to a completely immersive experience. And then, of course, there's always this podcast and these extra YouTube videos. So for starters, I want to share with you about my resilience journal. Now might be the perfect time to buy because when this episode airs, it is going to be during Amazon Prime days. They actually have multiple days this year. So this is your chance to get the journal if you have not already done so, and to buy the journal as gifts. You can purchase them for your team, for your clients, for your friends and family. It's a great way to introduce yourself to your nervous system. Then, of course, I have the Nervous System Journaling Club, which is a perfect companion to the journal. It's a whole community. This is where we connect with each other. We do some journaling and doodling, and it is a great entry into a world of connection because you've heard me say this before. We heal in connection. So the community is a great place to share and grow. And if you're there and you do want to go deeper, then you can get access to my monthly membership connections, which I only open up a few times a year. Doors are closed right now, but there's a back door through the Nervous System Journaling Club community. And then I have my advanced training in nervous system resilience. The next cohort comes up. It starts in September 2025. This is a great opportunity if you're a coach or a helping professional or just somebody who really wants to take a deep dive. It's a very intense, immersive 6 months experience. Anyone who's done it has said it was life-changing, the best investment they've ever made. I have a couple of spots left. If you want to snag one, just reach out. I only run this training once per year. We start in September. And lastly, I know that's a lot, but I do have some super fun things coming up, some new products, a super fun workshop with a physical product as a bonus, so stay tuned. All right, let's get back to the main topic today. So a couple months ago, I found out that my son got into medical school here in Canada. Very excited to have him and his partner living closer to us. He's been traveling for the past couple of months before starting, and he sent me a text recommending a book that he had just finished. So I was away at the time, perfect timing for me to start a new book, and the book was called When Breath Becomes Air. So I laughed because here he's traveling, I'm traveling, and then we choose this light read about life and death. But I do highly recommend it and give you a warning though, it's not super light. So the book is Paul Kalanithe's memoir. It was written while he was dying of cancer at the age of 36. He was a neurosurgeon, he was a new father, and so his exposure to being a doctor really gave him a unique exposure and perspective of the mechanics of mortality, better than most of us will ever understand. So I read it, and I tell you, at the end, it was like a full body cry. I was actually tearful all the way through, crying all the way through, in fact. I had to keep putting it down near the end because I couldn't read through my tears. When I finished it, I sent my son a text, who had also finished it, and I said to him, "It was devastatingly beautiful." And he responded saying, "Oh, yeah, that's the perfect way to describe it. Devastatingly beautiful." And that phrase kept swirling in my brain for days, devastatingly beautiful, because it really perfectly captured something that I couldn't name about my own life and some of the very tender personal experiences. And then, even many times in my work, honestly, I think it's a phrase that is really relatable to probably every single person who's ever sat across from me in a session or in one of my groups or has interacted with me over the years. We are all walking around with these stories that are simultaneously heartbreaking and beautiful, like losses that have gutted us to the core and carved us wide open, but somehow are able to let light in. So these traumas that we think totally should have buried us and destroyed us, but instead really became that soil or the fertilizer where we have grown, where our deepest wisdom has grown. This is where we've learned the most. At least that's always been my experience. This is where I have connected with my vulnerability and connected with others and certainly connected to my higher power. And as I was contemplating this devastatingly beautiful phrase, I remembered a term that I'd encountered years ago, but didn't really fully understand, and that is tragic optimism. So it's a phrase that comes from Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. He wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend you do. Again, it's not light reading, but so much wisdom, so much goodness in this book. And you've probably heard me quote Frankl before because I love most of what he has to say. So he defined tragic optimism as the ability to maintain hope and find meaning in life despite its inescapable pain, loss, and suffering, which is exactly what he was able to do when he was in the concentration camp and he survived only to find out that his entire family had not survived. So when you hear tragic optimism, what comes up for you? Because I know some people may think of it as some type of spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity, all wrapped up in a fancy name of tragic optimism. But I don't think it is. Now, another author that I love and I've mentioned before is Brad Stulberg. And in his book, The Practice of Groundedness, he takes Frankl's concept and says tragic optimism is not delusional, it's not denial, and it's not toxic positivity. But it's also not despair. It's holding on to everything at once and trudging forward as best you can. And this is where the distinction is critical. We're not talking about just being positive. We're talking about being anchored in reality, but still choosing to engage with life. Now, of course, I always want to invite the nervous system into this conversation, but before I do, I want to introduce another concept that we can tie into this, which is learned optimism. This was research that was done by Martin Seligman. He was the father of positive psychology, and he came up with this idea of learned optimism after years of studying the term, or what he coined, learned helplessness. So his research showed that people can actually learn to be more hopeful and optimistic, even if they naturally lean towards negativity or worst case scenario thinking, which many of us do. We'll get back to that in a minute. So it's not about toxic positivity. He found it actually was about changing the way we explain challenges to ourselves, because that impacts whether we stay stuck in despair, stuck in shame, stuck in helplessness. He teaches that when something bad happens, people tend to explain it using the 3 P's of pessimism. And this is what we actually want to unlearn. I did a podcast about the 3 P's years and years ago now, back on, I think it was episode 36, believe it or not. So the 3 P's that people lean into towards pessimism is they take things personally. They are more likely to say, it's all my fault, where you blame yourself, even when it's not entirely yours to carry. We think that it is permanent. things will never get better, and you assume a situation is fixed and can't change. And then it's pervasive. It ruins everything. You generalize this struggle to your whole life and your whole identity. So that's when we're looking at things through the lens of pessimism. But with learned optimism, you flip it and you remind yourself that, first of all, not everything is your fault. Some things are just hard. Secondly, hard things are usually temporary. And thirdly, a setback in one area of your life doesn't mean your whole life is falling apart. So, overall, Seligman's studies found that people who bounced back from challenges tended to simply explain adversity in healthier ways. It's not that they didn't have setbacks or they didn't have adversities, it's that they saw these setbacks as temporary, specific, and external, not permanent and personal. Okay, so what does this have to do with the nervous system? Well, if you note, when I said that many of us can lean towards worst case scenario or catastrophic thinking, this is what we do when we tend to be dysregulated. The idea of learned optimism only really works when your nervous system isn't full on threat mode. You can't learn optimism or tragic optimism unless your nervous system feels safe enough to receive and hold these ideas. Now, because all of the philosophical understanding in the world doesn't matter, all that cognitive, logical explanations doesn't matter if your nervous system is stuck in survival mode. Now, I see this over and over again in my own life, in my work with people who intellectually understand concepts like post-traumatic growth, which I also have an old episode about that too, or the importance of finding meaning in suffering, but their bodies are still in a state of threat. Their shoulders are constantly tense, their breathing is shallow, they're scanning for danger, even in safe places. And that makes complete sense because when you're in this fight or flight, or that team hyper, like I call it, your brain, your CEO brain, literally can't process nuances. So it can't hold this idea of both and that tragic optimism requires. It gets stuck in the either and the or. So essentially, you can't access tragic optimism from a dysregulated nervous system. Your body has to feel safe enough to hold multiple truths at the same time. It has to feel safe enough to grieve and have hope at the same time, safe enough to acknowledge pain without being consumed by it. And that is why we want to get into our body first. We need to teach our nervous system that it's safe to feel everything, not to fix it or change it, but just be with it. And that's why I'm so passionate about my 3-step safety sequence. And there's a whole YouTube video about that. It's also explained in my journal because it's more than just about feeling better in the moment. It's about deliberately creating that neurological foundation, that capacity for safety, that safe container that makes tragic optimism possible. Okay, so earlier I mentioned post-traumatic growth and it ties in, so I want to circle back to it. I do have a much older episode about it you can go back and re-listen to. But in a nutshell, the science behind post-traumatic growth shows us that when we're forced to reflect on our lives and make sense of destruction that has been caused by trauma, our struggles can actually become catalysts for change. Now, this is not automatic and it's not guaranteed, and it's definitely not about getting over anything. But we do know that those who are more capable of engaging with their emotional experiences due to crisis and trauma and make meaning of these experiences are more likely to increase their capacity for growth. When we're grieving or going through pain, we often try to make sense of it. And what can be possible is that we can find a way to make meaning. And I emphasize here, make meaning, not find meaning, because often I think it's hard to just find meaning. Lots of things don't make sense. So rather, we need to make meaning, which can involve trying to see through a different lens or at least rework part of your story. So maybe you begin to ask different questions about what matters or try to see something through a different angle. And meaning making doesn't erase pain, but what it does is it gives pain context. Essentially, it acknowledged this is part of my story. This is the part when I'm having a certain challenge or adversity. It's not the end of my story, and it's not my entire story. It allows us to accept what is, even grieve what is, but then also hold on to hope. Now, toxic positivity, it tells us to jump straight to gratitude. Tragic optimism invites us to feel that heartbreak, that pain, that ache, and still believe in tomorrow and have hope for tomorrow. This distinction matters so much because we're so quick to try to fix or reframe or regulate our way out of pain. We try to bounce back, forgetting that our experience does change us. And this attempt at trying to get back and bounce back and move forward and fix can actually disconnect us from what we need most, which is first, presence with what is. So it's nice to talk about this. How do you actually live it? Remember, we're good at understanding the intellectual. How do we put this in practice? Firstly, you have to get comfortable with the both and reframe that I mentioned earlier. Most of us were raised in this emotional either or world. You're happy or sad, you're grateful or angry, you're moving forward or you're stuck. But real life and real healing happens in that space in between. Now, this can be something that you journal about, or what you know, I'll encourage you to do, you'll doodle about it. Today, I hold both. And you can doodle or journal. What are you holding both for today? Today, I hold both grief for what's lost, curiosity for what's coming, both disappointment and how something turned out, and appreciation for what I've learned. And it's not about a gratitude practice, it's kind of like a reality practice. And secondly, you want to learn how to befriend your nervous system instead of fighting it. You want to work with it. When something like anxiety shows up, instead of saying and thinking, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or trying to fight it, or even use coping strategies to get it away, I really encourage you to first start allowing it. Try to say something like, my system is trying to protect me. What do I need to feel safe right now? And sometimes you'll find what you need is to slow down. Sometimes it's to call a friend. Sometimes it just needs you to say, I see you, I hear you, we're going to figure this out together. And thirdly, and this can be a challenging one, you want to practice holding space for other people's complexity too. When someone shares with you about their loss, you don't want to immediately jump to, well, at least, or look on the bright side. You want to say something like, that sounds incredibly hard. Tell me more. I love the phrase, tell me more. I use it all the time. And not as a trite phrase. It's something that I actually genuinely mean. I want to continue to work on my curiosity and am genuinely interested in what others are experiencing. So tell me more is a simple way to express that. So when somebody is struggling, tell me more. I don't have to fix them. I don't have to give them some wisdom to get them to feel better. Instead, tell me more allows us to sit together in the mess and trust that their own wisdom will emerge when it's ready. Here's what I've learned after years of this work and trying to navigate my own life. Resilience is not just about bouncing back. It's actually about continuing to just bounce, even tiny bounces. It's about bouncing forward too. It's about letting your cracks show, allowing them, to become windows instead of trying to super glue everything back together to how it used to be. I think the most courageous thing a human can do is show up fully to what is and trust that meaning can be made from even the most broken pieces. We're not working towards regulating our nervous system so that we won't feel pain or sadness or have to get over things. We're regulating so that we can allow and hold it, so that we can live with the reality of what is and be hopeful at the same time. You don't have to choose. You can hold it all. You can grieve and grow. You can break and build. You can fall apart and find yourself in pieces. You can be devastatingly beautiful, just like the stories that we all carry and all of us, the people that come through them. And if you want to practice holding this kind of space for yourself, I'd love for you to join us in the Nervous System Journaling Club. We don't do fake positivity there. It's really about creating that container of safety and depth and trying to create that hope that can weather all the different storms that we're going to go through in life. Tragic optimism really is about hope that doesn't need everything to be okay all the time, that we can still believe that meaning is still possible. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Building Resilience podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing stress, building resilience, and leading a more purposeful life, then make sure we're connected on Instagram and Facebook at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. You can also subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.leahdavidsonlifecoaching.com/newsletter. Looking forward to connecting.